On a cold evening in November 2021, Bobbi Ann McLeod, a young woman from Plymouth, England, was waiting alone at a bus stop, intending to catch a bus to the city center to meet her friends. Dressed for a night out, she stood by the roadside, unaware of the fate that awaited her. As the minutes ticked by, the expected bus came and went, but Bobbi Ann was nowhere to be found. Bobbi Ann McLeod was born in 2003 in Plymouth, a lively coastal town in the southwest of England. She grew up there with her parents, Donna and Adrian McLeod, and her older brother Lee. The McLeods were a tight-knit family, always making an effort to show each family member their personal worth and importance to the family harmony. Besides the love they shared, the parents instilled strong values in their children like responsibility and respect. This probably explains why there was no competition between the siblings for their parents' affection and attention. This situation helped Bobbi Ann and Lee forge a real sibling bond, without the usual rivalry for the spotlight at home. This doesn't mean they were angels or never fought. They had their typical sibling squabbles, but their affection for each other was clear to those around them. Bobbi Ann and Lee were lucky to live in Plymouth, a place with a rich history dating back centuries, known for its monumental buildings and stunning seafront that often impress visitors. Surrounded by such a positive environment, Bobbi Ann thrived, becoming a popular and cheerful person, always with a bright smile on her face. People who knew her from high school described her as a pretty girl with fair skin, long hair, not very tall, and with a delicate demeanor. Her kindness, loyalty, and willingness to help others made her a great friend to many. Like many teenagers, Bobbi Ann was drawn to the rebelliousness of alternative rock and its provocative lyrics. She listened to artists and bands like Pink Floyd, Nirvana, Queen, and even the controversial rapper Eminem. Despite the loud music that challenged the norms, Bobbi Ann remained the sweet girl everyone knew. She loved watching Disney movies, with Lilo and Stitch being her favorite, fascinated by the blue alien, her favorite color. At school, she was known for her artistic talent and creativity. She was always motivated and clear about what she wanted in life. One of her goals was to graduate from high school, and upon achieving that, she aimed for higher education. She entered university aspiring to become an interior designer. Around this time, she also experienced young love, starting a relationship with a local boy a year younger than her. They made a cute couple, got along well, and shared many friends. Donna and Adrian, as parents, and Lee, as the older brother, approved of the relationship, seeing that the young couple didn't neglect their responsibilities because of love. In fact, since they were all busy with studies during the week, they made sure to plan time together on weekends. So, on Saturday, November 20th, 2021, nobody at the McLeod's home was surprised when Bobbi Ann said she would go out with her boyfriend, keeping up with their routine of nurturing their romance. They had plans to meet some friends at 8 p.m. in the city center. She had to leave home well in advance to account for the travel distance and the need to catch a bus. It was around 5:45 p.m. when the young girl bid her father goodbye, told him she loved him, promised to be back at the agreed time, and left for the bus stop. She had a 4-minute walk to the nearest bus stop at the end of her street, a route she was familiar with. Between 6:05 and 6:15 p.m., some passersby spotted her standing at the stop, looking up and down the street waiting for the bus. Like any girl her age, while waiting, she used her mobile phone and checked her social media. She took a selfie and posted it on her story, mentioning how cold she was feeling. At the same time, Cody Ackland, a promising musician from Plymouth aged 24, was in the area. Little is known about Cody's early life, other than he was the son of David and Helen Ackland, born in June 1997 in Germany, where his father, a former military man, was stationed. After his parents divorced during his childhood, he lived with his mother in Plymouth, close to the bus stop where Bobbi Ann was waiting. Although Cody attended the same high school as Bobbi Ann, their 6-year age difference meant they likely never met there. After school, he worked various jobs, but music was his passion, leading him to become an indie rock band's lead guitarist and songwriter. To those who knew him, he was a nice guy making a name in the local music scene, with no history of violence or trouble with the law. However, his bandmates noticed his tendency towards depression and a not-so-cheerful temperament, which was starkly different from his energetic stage person. Unknown to many, Cody harbored interests far removed from the music world, and behind his friendly and sometimes melancholic exterior lurked a much darker side. In secret, Cody had developed a bizarre fascination with serial killers from around the world, and even kept a list of dangerous individuals he admired. Among his favorites were Joseph James D'Angelo, Andre Chikatilo, Yvonne McLeod, Fred West, and Tommy Lynn Sells, all notorious for their heinous minds, but topping Cody's dark list was none other than Ted Bundy. This criminal had kidnapped, sexually assaulted, and murdered about 30 women in the 1970s in the United States. After being convicted for the trail of terror he left behind, Bundy was executed in 1989. With his criminal idol in mind, Cody got into his car and, in a twist of fate that would prove deadly for Bobbi Ann, spotted her at the bus stop. The exact details of how he approached her remain unclear, but it's likely she didn't see him as a threat due to his unassuming appearance. Taking advantage of the secluded spot, Cody struck her on the head with a hammer, the blow causing her to collapse. He tried to flee, but upon reaching his car, he noticed she was trying to get up. He returned to the scene, dragged her to his vehicle, and forcibly placed her inside, despite her incapacitated state. In the McLeod family, there was a rule that whoever left home should inform the family upon reaching their destination. This simple act provided peace of mind. That's why, when an hour and a half had passed since Bobbi Ann left and Donna hadn't heard from her daughter, she started to worry. She texted to ask if Bobbi Ann was okay and if she had reached her meeting spot with her boyfriend. With no reply from Bobbi Ann and her phone going unanswered, which was out of character, the family grew anxious. By 8 p.m., her boyfriend, who was waiting for her at their planned meetup spot, was surprised by her absence, as punctuality was one of Bobbi Ann's notable traits. As time slowly ticked by without her arrival, he, trying to remain patient, stayed put, but eventually gave in to his nerves and began calling her. His worry deepened with each unanswered ring. About an hour later, he called the McLeod residence to ask if Bobbi Ann was there. This call escalated the family's anxiety, as no one knew her whereabouts, and all attempts to reach her on her mobile phone had failed. Donna and Adrian couldn't just sit by idly, so they started calling Bobbi Ann's friends one by one, only to sadly find out that no one knew where she was. Although they hoped nothing bad had happened, deep down they feared the worst. Without further delay, they went to the police and reported her missing. It was after 9 p.m. The next day, November 21st, 2021, the police launched a search operation in the area, joined by the McLeod family, friends, and volunteer neighbors. They also distributed flyers throughout the city featuring Bobbi Ann's photo and contact numbers for any sightings. Her disappearance was widely reported on social media and local news outlets. One of the most heartfelt appeals came from her brother Lee, who pleaded on social media for everyone in Plymouth to help search for his little sister. He urged anyone with any information about Bobbi Ann to come forward, as he desperately wanted her back home. The police tried to trace the young girl's path from her house to the bus stop, but found nothing noteworthy. Knowing she planned to take a bus to the city center, they inquired with the bus service to see if she had boarded any of their vehicles, but this lead quickly went nowhere. However, during interviews with locals, the police received a crucial tip from a resident who had passed by the bus stop the previous afternoon and seen Bobbi Ann there, around the time she took her last social media photo. This confirmed that she had reached the bus stop and stayed there for some time, giving investigators a starting point. Upon searching the nearby area, officers found a pair of AirPods behind the bus shelter, later confirmed by Donna and Adrian to belong to Bobbi Ann. The area around the bus stop was cordoned off with yellow tape, and the police conducted a thorough inspection, even getting on their knees to search for any potential evidence. The search extended to all nearby streets. Since Bobbi Ann never boarded the bus and her AirPods were found close to the bus stop, authorities considered the possibility that she might have been abducted or attacked during a robbery attempt. Believing public involvement was crucial in gathering information to find the missing student, the authorities turned to the media, calling on anyone with even the slightest information related to the case to come forward to the nearest police station. The detective of the case provided a detailed description of the missing teenager, 18 years old, slim build with light brown, shoulder-length straight hair, and green eyes, wearing ear piercings. He mentioned that, according to her family, she was last seen wearing a gray sweater, black ripped jeans, fishnet stockings, and light-colored sneakers. He also directed a message to Bobbi Ann herself, urging her to contact the police if she heard the appeal. He emphasized that she wasn't in trouble. They just needed to know she was safe. Another task for the investigators was to track her mobile phone, which led them to the city's outskirts, though they couldn't pinpoint the exact location. However, luck struck that same day. A bus driver on the route near the bus stop where Bobbi Ann vanished handed over her phone to the police. He explained that on November 20th at 7:15 p.m., a local found the phone and an empty AirPods case at the same stop used by Bobbi Ann. When a bus arrived at 7:23 p.m., the local spoke with the driver and handed over the items, assuming the owner would come looking for them. The next day, after seeing news of Bobbi Ann's disappearance and her last sighting at his bus stop, the driver decided to give the found items to the police. On November 22nd, the family, police, and volunteers continued searching for clues in the fields, forests, and roads around Bobbi Ann's area, but found nothing, growing increasingly desperate. Then, on November 23, 2021, at 1:17 p.m., a voluntary witness's statement at the police station significantly shifted the investigation's direction. A young, well-dressed, and polite man entered the station, offering information about the missing girl, expressing his wish to assist the police and her family. The officer summoned a detective to speak with him. Unaware of the bombshell about to drop, the detective listened as the man claimed he had abducted Bobbi Ann from the bus stop 3 days prior and had since killed her, providing details of the alleged crime. The police, skeptical of whether to believe his story or dismiss him as a fame-seeking lunatic, placed a map before the self-confessed perpetrator, asking him to pinpoint where he left Bobbi Ann. While some officers still hoped the interior design student might be alive, they rushed to the indicated location. Sadly, there was no chance of rescuing Bobbi Ann. The dense underbrush impeded their advance, but as they moved forward, they found a woman's unclothed body lying face down. The state of the scene and the skin's discoloration left no doubt. The woman had died days earlier. Later, the police publicly announced that after receiving a confession from a suspect and verifying its authenticity, they had discovered a woman's lifeless body on a beach about 7 miles from the bus stop where Bobbi Ann was last seen. The body was found in a wooded area and the victim had yet to be identified. However, due to the height and certain physical traits, investigators strongly believed it was Bobbi Ann. While awaiting official identification, they informed the McLeod family of the discovery. The suspicions were confirmed when dental records of the victim matched those of the abducted student. The confirmation that the body was indeed that of the beloved missing student sent shockwaves through the local community. The people of Plymouth, who had actively participated in the search, were shattered by the tragic end of the case. To express their grief and support for the McLeod family, residents held a vigil near the bus stop from where Bobbi Ann was taken. Overwhelmed by tears and trying to stay strong, Bobbi Ann's mother thanked friends and the community for their support during the search and at the vigil honoring her daughter's memory. She regretted the sad circumstances that brought them together. With a quivering voice and shaking hands surrounded by loved ones, she delivered a prepared statement highlighting the blessing it was to watch Bobbi Ann grow up in their family. She mentioned that although her beloved daughter's life was taken too soon, the beautiful impact she had wherever she went would never be forgotten. Then, lifting her candle, she asked everyone to do the same in memory of her daughter, followed by a minute of silence. Lee, Bobbi Ann's older brother, also shared his feelings, but he did so on social media, thanking her for the time they spent together and vowing never to forget her. He expressed how unjust it was for such a beautiful and talented girl to meet such a horrific and undeserved end. He shared a childhood photo of them, smiling and happy in their primary school uniforms. In the message accompanying the photo, Lee wrote that he hoped to reunite with his beloved little sister in heaven and that it was an honor to be her big brother. He promised to forever cherish the adventures and journeys they shared and wished her eternal peace. As the community and those close to Bobbi Ann were still reeling from the shock of the events, the gruesome details of the crime began to emerge, stirring a mix of grief and anger among them. The forensic report highlighted the severe injuries she sustained from a blunt object, likely a hammer, revealing she had 14 serious wounds to her head and face. Contrasting with the attack's brutality, and despite her body being found unclothed, the forensic expert found no evidence of sexual assault before her death. Media outlets then disclosed the name of the alleged perpetrator of the brutal assault that ended Bobbi Ann McLeod's life, identifying him as 24-year-old Cody Ackland, a musician from the same town. Following the revelation of the suspect's identity, Cody's lawyer issued a statement on his behalf, claiming full responsibility for the crime. His assertion in the statement that he had never seen the young woman before the night of the incident baffled the public, leaving the motive for such a cruel and unwarranted attack a mystery. For those who knew Cody, this news was a shocking blow, as he had never been in trouble before. However, as the investigation delved into Cody's computer, phone, and other belongings seized along with his car, they uncovered chilling aspects of his life that no one knew. Investigators found over 3,000 images on the supposedly quiet musician's phone, revealing a sinister side unknown to all. Many of these images resembled scenes from horror movies due to their disturbing and dark nature. His browsing history also showed that in the days and weeks leading up to the young woman's abduction, Cody had been researching the most heinous acts committed by serial criminals, as well as remote locations and potential weapons. In the hours before the young girl's abduction, Cody visited the website of an online sports store, browsing through baseball bats and waterproof clothing. For the investigators, the unfolding evidence seemed almost unbelievable, as Cody had been a complete unknown to them before he walked into the station with his horrific confession. He had appeared so normal that he had never attracted police attention or been involved in any trouble before. The investigators theorized that on the day of the crime, Cody succumbed to his secret desire to emulate the serial killers he idolized, leading him to commit a serious offense. They believed Bobbi Ann was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, her life tragically ending due to a stranger's urge to act on his dark criminal instincts. They speculated that if Bobbi Ann hadn't crossed his path, Cody might have targeted anyone else, regardless of age or gender, with his sole intent being to take a life, not necessarily to commit sexual assault. In the midst of the turmoil caused by the crime and its disturbing details, the band Cody was part of, which had recorded its first disc in August of the same year, announced on social media their decision to disband immediately. They stated that ending the band, for which Cody was the guitarist and songwriter, was an act of respect for the deceased teenager. They expressed shock over the tragedy and difficulty in coming to terms with what had happened, extending their thoughts and prayers to the family and friends of the university student who were devastated by her loss. Finally, on November 26, 2021, Cody appeared before the court, charged with murder. In the brief hearing, he was seen wearing a gray cotton sweater and a blue mask, adhering to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic health measures. He spoke only to confirm his name, address, and date of birth. The presiding magistrate informed him that he would be held in custody and face trial at the Crown Court in Plymouth. Cody was scheduled to appear at the court for a preliminary hearing to address all matters related to the case before proceeding to the actual trial. It was during the pre-trial hearings that the full extent of the horror unleashed on the day Bobbi Ann and Cody's paths tragically crossed was revealed. Bobbi Ann arrived at the bus shelter around 6:15 p.m. At that time, Cody, driving his Ford Fiesta, spotted her at the stop. He noted a slight resemblance between Bobbi Ann and his ex-girlfriend, but he clarified that his actions were not triggered by emotional reasons or the resemblance. Instead, he had been seeking a victim to fulfill his long-standing plans. Bobbi Ann, a design student, seemed the perfect target for him, so he parked on the road behind the bus stop. After stopping, he watched not only her but also the surroundings to ensure no one else was around. Then he quietly approached her with a hammer he had brought along and struck her twice on the head. Believing the blows were fatal, he returned to his car to escape, but to his astonishment, he saw that Bobbi Ann was not only alive, but also trying to get up from the ground. Faced with this unforeseen situation, Cody went back to the bus stop, dragged her away, and somehow managed to get her into his vehicle. He then drove her to a secluded parking area about 7 miles away. It was around 7:45 p.m. when he stopped in the midst of a wooded area, intending to dispose of the body there. What had already occurred to the innocent young woman was tragic enough, but the worst was yet to unfold. The most painful and chilling part of the story began at this point. Cody recounted that when he attempted to leave the body, he realized Bobbi Ann was still alive and conscious. Despite having the opportunity to repent and seek help or take her to a hospital for medical care, Cody chose not to deviate from his original plan. He decided to remove her from the car, and at that moment, despite being attacked by him, the defenseless young woman expressed her fear to him. Cody told her he was scared too because he had never done anything like this before. Then he attacked her with the hammer, striking her 12 times in the head. He immediately set about destroying evidence, starting with burning her handbag in the woods. When he returned to where Bobbi Ann lay, he was, in his words, both surprised and impressed because she was still alive, making some sounds. Admitting he admired her resilience, He said he then ended her suffering by suffocating her. Next, he placed her body in the trunk of his car and drove about 30 miles, where he hid the body after undressing her and removing her jewelry. Around 10 p.m., Cody returned home and went straight to bed. The next day, he threw the hammer into a river and disposed of a bag containing the blood-stained clothes of both him and Bobbi Ann at some orchards. On November 21st, while the McLeods, police, and their community were frantically searching for the young woman, Cody was out enjoying himself. He went to a pizzeria with friends, attended a band rehearsal, and spent most of the night in a local bar. Witnesses called to testify noted that Cody seemed unusually cheerful that day, even making jokes and hugging friends. The defendant recounted that on November 22nd, he continued enjoying himself, buying sweets and going to the movies, while keeping up with the latest news and massive search efforts for Bobbi Ann on his phone. However, the initial euphoria of having fulfilled his dark fantasies gradually faded. On November 23rd, Cody went to his job at a car service company where he worked as a valet. The morning was uneventful, but after his lunch break he made an unexpected turn. Cody messaged his bandmates telling them he loved them and they might not see each other for a while. He also sent a message to his mother expressing his love. Then, he went to the police station and confessed to the crime. During the police statements at the hearings, it was made clear that in addition to Cody's confession, there were numerous pieces of physical evidence collected from various locations he visited after the crime. Investigators found the victim's DNA in Cody's Ford Fiesta and on sneakers recovered at his house. As for the motive behind the crime, the detective who led the investigation noted that the suspected perpetrator refused to elaborate on his reasons. Despite attempts to get answers, Cody consistently avoided questions about why he took Bobbi Ann's life. He recalled that, after surrendering, Cody told the police that the crime hadn't been on his mind, as it felt as surreal as a movie or fantasy. He later admitted he couldn't fully grasp his feelings about having taken someone's life, suggesting it felt like someone else had committed the act. Concerning Cody's mental state, a psychiatrist evaluating his fitness to stand trial uncovered a significant detail. The accused confessed to the specialist that the depressive feelings he had experienced throughout his life vanished after he killed the university student, and he no longer felt the same level of resentment as before. With all the case-related evidence presented during the pre-trial hearings, the trial proceeded in a Crown court between April and May 2022. In the courtroom, Cody's lawyer acknowledged that while psychiatrists found his client did not have a mental illness, he had endured significant emotional difficulties throughout his life. He mentioned that Cody was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, dyslexia, and anxiety from an early age, and had battled depression for at least 7 years. He also pointed out that Cody had received little consolation or emotional support at home and found none during his school years. Regarding a father figure or other male role models, he stated that Cody had never experienced anything positive, which, in his view, explained Cody's admiration for negative male figures. In contrast, the prosecution pointed out Cody's obsession with serial killers, particularly Ted Bundy, noting the deliberate choice of a hammer as a weapon, mirroring the preference of his top-ranked criminal idol. During the sentencing hearing, the judge characterized Cody as highly dangerous, emphasizing that his interest in serial killers extended beyond morbid fascination. He highlighted the loss of Bobbi Ann McLeod's potential life, describing her murder as brutal and savage, and stated that the crime not only caused outrage, but also instilled fear across the region, for which Cody must also bear responsibility. The prosecutor depicted Cody as leading a double life, driven by a pathological desire to emulate serial killers. He called for a severe sentence for the prolonged and frenzied attack against a petite, defenseless young woman who expressed fear during her ordeal. The prosecution presented a victim impact statement from the McLeod family, portraying Bobbi Ann as a beautiful and bright young woman full of future plans, brutally stolen from them. They expressed that life without her was unbearable, and while acknowledging no sentence could match the severity of the crime, demanded the full extent of legal retribution. The defense attorney, on the other hand, argued for mitigation, citing Cody's voluntary surrender and confession, which provided the McLeod family with some closure and knowledge of their daughter's fate. When delivering the sentence, the judge addressed Cody directly, stating he had brutally ended the life of a wonderful young woman after a prolonged torment. He sentenced Cody to life imprisonment, setting a minimum term of 31 years before eligibility for parole. 6 months after the tragic day her life was extinguished, the time came to bid farewell to Bobbi Ann McLeod. The profound impact of her case on the community and the genuine affection of the locals for the friendly and beautiful young woman and her family were once again evident. On May 26, 2022, the day of the interior design student's funeral, hundreds lined the streets of Plymouth to pay tribute as the procession passed through the city center. The hearse, covered with a blanket and plush figures of her favorite childhood characters, Lilo and Stitch, was drawn by a horse-drawn carriage. At the funeral, Bobbi Ann's favorite music, alternative rock, played, and many attendees wore band t-shirts and black jeans as a nod to the beloved young woman. Out of respect, they avoided wearing ripped jeans, the fashion she donned on the day she was attacked. One of the most touching moments was when people left flowers and balloons at a memorial bench near the bus stop, where the attack and abduction occurred. Cody's obsession with one of the most notorious serial killers of the 20th century led him to commit the unthinkable. His crime shattered a family and community still mourning the loss of the delightful young woman he killed. And with this, we conclude today's episode of Unreal True Crime. Join me next time as we delve into the details of history's most horrific crimes. Goodbye.